I'm Amalingua, and I don't even know if I need to review this movie because I already lived it. I got kicked out of all-girls Catholic school for writing horror stories and what they called overall negative attitude. Unlike you, my darling viewers, my teachers and fellow students did not appreciate my sense of humor.
Just because we're pretty, everybody's jealous.
But while I relished being antisocial, I didn't take it anywhere to the extremes of the young ladies in today's movie. I'm talking about the iconoclastic French film that was banned in its home country, 1971's Don't Deliver Us from Evil, written and directed by Seria. Anne and Laura are two teenage girls imprisoned at a Catholic boarding school, a rigid environment that they find stultifying to say the least. While the priests and nuns stress conformity and obedience and the performance of good deeds, Anne and Laura rebel by pledging to be as evil as possible.
Aujourd'hui, vendredi 29 juin, bonne journée. J'ai fait punir Céline Crespin à ma place, alors que c'était moi qui avais chahuté. Dimanche, elle sera privée de sortie. À notre confesseur, l'abbé Dupré, j'ai confessé 2 péchés d'impureté que je n'avais pas commis. Cela devient de plus en plus excitant. Laure et moi éprouvons maintenant un plaisir de plus en plus intense à faire le mal. Péché est devenu notre principal objectif. Comme d'autres, les crétins passent leur vie sous le signe de la vertu. Laure et moi le plaçons sous le signe de Satan, notre Seigneur et Maître.
Fueled by their hatred of the church, Anne and Laura relish doing evil, whether it's Anne confessing sin she didn't commit just to embarrass the priest, trying to seduce men just so the two girls can torment them, or pilfering the host to be used in a black mass perversion of a communion ceremony where they pledge their souls to Satan. Big Catholic no-no! The girls' actions escalate from mischievous pranks to violence until finally, when the walls start closing in and they're threatened with separation from one another, Anne and Laura decide to perform a grand gesture that will have them together in hell forever. Don't Deliver Us from Evil was a personal film for Seria, one he used to exercise the anger from childhood at both the Catholic Church and his parents. He spent 10 years in Catholic boarding schools, which felt like prison to him, and stated that when on vacation from school, he had to lock up all the kitchen knives so to keep from stabbing his parents in their sleep. Seria was also inspired by Pauline Parker-Juliet Hulme, the case in which 2 teenage girls had concocted an elaborate fantasy world for themselves and bludgeoned Parker's mother to death. Viewers of this channel will recognize this case as also being the basis of Peter Jackson's great film, Heavenly Creatures. Seria's film offers an excoriating depiction of the Catholic Church and its followers. The priest is a clownish buffoon, the parishioners vacuous sheep, and the nuns at the school are hypocrites who don't practice what they preach. The rules and constant admonitions to perform good deeds are depicted as means of control versus a genuine moral code. So to Anne and Laura, the celebration of evil as a rejection of oppressive goodness is a welcome relief.
Bonne nuit, mesdames!
Don't Deliver Us from Evil was banned in its native France, not for sex or violence, but for blasphemy. The film was completely independently financed. While it was distributed with an X rating in Britain and a surprise hit there due to its sensationalistic ad campaign, the film remained unreleased in France and was also not released in the United States. The film has been overlooked and hard to find. I could be wrong, but I don't even think it got a VHS release in North America. But thanks to Mondo Macabro, it's available on DVD and Blu-ray for your viewing pleasure. One of the reasons I love this film is I can relate to the girls due to my own experience with Catholic school. I don't have any personal grievances against the Catholic Church itself, but I hated Catholic school. With its endless arbitrary rules and passive-aggressive authoritarianism, it felt like being trapped in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Your hand is staining my window.
Sorry, man.
All
Sorry.
I hated the constant demands for conformity and the busy work. I've always been the kind of person who wanted to do my own thing my own way, but the school thought I was just being difficult and rebellious, and the teachers did everything they could to discourage my interests and try to force me to be someone I didn't want to be. The more they tried to stuff me into a box I didn't fit in, the more defiant I got. I also despised teachers and the other girls alike who feigned goodness and piety, but were really petty and mean-spirited. Bullying at that school was worse than any other school I've ever been to. Rather than living the values of their religion, they seem to see heaven as their personal country club in the sky.
If the only thing keeping a person decent is the expectation of divine reward, then, brother, that person is a piece of shit. And I'd like to get as many of them out in the open as possible.
But this kind of behavior isn't exclusive to Catholicism or any other religion. Jeanne Goupil, who stars as Anne, related to the character and the script, as she was also a rebellious, forceful girl reacting against a repressive environment. She was not raised Catholic, but her parents were communists, which she also describes as similarly rigid, dogmatic, and conformist. Political zealotry and religious zealotry amount to the same thing.
I guess there's just two kinds of people, Miss Sandstone. My kind of people and assholes. It's rather obvious which category you fit into. Have a nice day.
Jeanne Goupil is fantastic in this film, by the way. Jeanne was 20 years old at the time. She wasn't an actress and had no prior acting experience. Instead, she was an art student who was passionate about film. When Joel Seria was having difficulty casting the part, a mutual friend recommended Jeanne, insisting she be perfect for it. Seria had his doubts, but after being impressed by her reading, he cast her without a screen test. It was Jeanne who gave herself the awkward bangs Anne wears for this movie, which is a great touch. All teenage girls have given themselves bad bangs at some point. I think of any of the self-defeating things I did at that age, that was probably the most damaging. The experience of filming Don't Deliver Us from Evil must have caused them to bond, because Seria and Goupil later married and had 2 children, and they're still happily married to this day. Who knew the French film banned in France could be so romantic? The other girl playing Laure is Catherine Wagener, who is a more experienced actress, having been featured in Les Risques du Métier and a supporting role in Sorella, before co-starring in Don't Deliver Us from Evil. She died at 52 due to drug addiction. More than Heavenly Creatures, Don't Deliver Us from Evil reminds me of Daisies, the surreal Czech New Wave film. I did a video on that one back in November. Both films are about a pair of teenage girls rebelling against oppressive authority by behaving as badly as possible. In Daisies, it's the totalitarian communist government, where in Don't Deliver Us from Evil, it's the church. But where in Daisies, the girls' actions are more freewheeling and irreverent, Anne and Laure in Don't Deliver Us from Evil's actions escalate from mischievous pranks to cruelty and sadism. I found the scenes where Anne torments Leon, the mentally handicapped gardener, by destroying his possessions and killing his pet birds to be painful and hard to watch. And if you're a mushy animal lover like me, be warned, there's a killing of a canary that's particularly hard to stomach. Even as a kid, it always bothered me how mindlessly cruel people could be to someone they perceived as being weaker than them. It's one of the things that made me the misanthrope I am today.
Some people are okay, but mostly I just feel like poisoning everybody.
Unlike Marie 1 and 2 in Daisies, there's an elitism to the girls' actions in Don't Deliver Us from Evil. Anne is wealthy, her parents living in a palatial chateau. Laure's family lives in a more modest abode, but they are definitely middle class to upper middle class. The girls target manual laborers for their cruelest pranks, the slow-witted farmer's son Emile and Leon the gardener, people they see as beneath them socially and economically. There's no empathy or worry about consequences of harming these people because the girls don't see them as real people anyway. There's constructive rebellion and destructive rebellion. Constructive rebellion is more creative, either through artistic expression or offering an alternative or reform to the oppressive authority. Destructive rebellion is purely reactive. The rebel is so focused on the rejection of the norms they hate so much that they're still enslaved by it. In addition to their anger at the church, both girls feel unloved by their parents.
Vous avez des enfants?
Un garçon et une fille.
Vous les aimez?
Quelle question, bien entendu.
Pourquoi bien entendu? Nous connaissons des parents qui n'aiment pas leurs enfants. Les nôtres, par exemple.
Although pleasant on the surface, Anne's parents treat her more like an accessory than a daughter, completely ignoring her and abandoning her. Laure's parents are a little more normal and remind me of some of my friends' parents, but her mother is also constantly picking and nagging at her, while her father is grumpy and oblivious.
Comment va Anne?
Oh, elle va très bien, maman.
Qu'est-ce que vous avez fait hier après-midi?
On est allé se promener, maman.
Mais pourquoi n'allez-vous pas visiter l'abbaye de Fontevraud? C'est une merveille. Demande à ton père, n'est-ce pas, Henri?
Quoi?
Je suis en train de dire alors qu'elle devrait aller visiter l'abbaye de Fontevraud. Qu'est-ce que tu en penses?
Ah, ça au moins, ce serait une balade intelligente.
Antisocial actions aside, the film is an accurate depiction of both positive and negative aspects of adolescence. The lovely pastoral shots of the girls riding their bicycles really evokes that exhilarating newfound freedom of being a teenager. And much like Heavenly Creatures, the film does a great job at depicting those intense you and me against the rest of the world friendships so many girls experience at that age, me included. And I think any creative person can relate to the girls escaping into an imaginary world they've created for themselves, fueled by the transgressive art and literature they love. Seria, much like Anne and Laure, was inspired by French decadent literature. French decadence rose out of Romanticism and Gothic, a response to the extreme oncoming changes in political instability in the 19th century, a rejection of what poet Baudelaire referred to as banal progress. Baudelaire was considered to be the founder of the movement, and the girls even recite his fleurs de mal in the film.
Nous aurons des lits pleins d'odeurs légères, des divans profonds comme des tombeaux, et d'étranges fleurs sur des étagères écloses pour nous sous des cieux plus beaux.
Elles sont folles, qu'est-ce qui leur prend?
Ce n'est pas ce qu'elles ont répété.
Faut prévenir la mère supérieure. Oui.
French decadence emphasized individual experience and sensual pleasures, using stylized language to find beauty in the morbid and obscene. The girls also read L'Outremont's Mal de Horreur, a long poem about a man doing all kinds of horrible things, from child murder to bestiality. It'd be the equivalent of rebellious teenagers reading Marquis de Sade. Rather than being inspired creatively, the girls also indulge in teenage nihilism. They only live for each day, with no perspective and no sense of consequences. And they suffer from that very teenage, I'm the center of the universe thinking, with a lack of empathy for anyone else outside their close circle. They also suffer from teenage arrogance. Anne and Laure are bright, but they make the false assumption that they're much smarter than everyone else around them, which is ultimately their undoing. When confronted with the consequences of their actions, they start to unravel. Seria described Anne as suffering from vanity and pride. Don't Deliver Us from Evil is also a rare, accurate depiction of teenage female sexuality with its combination of awkwardness and curiosity. The girls are always trying to come off as more knowledgeable and sophisticated than they really are, but ultimately, they're still pretty childlike. They flirt trying to act like adult women, but are still ultimately childish in that they don't seem to fully understand how their targets could respond. A few small critiques of the film. I really wanted Seria to establish more of the girls' day-to-day environment at the school so we get more of a sense of what the girls are rebelling against. Also, a few of the scenes linger for way too long. It feels more like a first-time filmmaker mistake than something done intentionally. But negatives aside, I love this movie. And I love that ending. For those of you who haven't seen the film, I reveal nothing. Many will find it nihilistic, but Seria sees it as a happy ending, which is a very French way of looking at it. In case my name didn't give it away, I'm half French, so naturally I love French film, I love French literature, and French culture. And I tend to spend a lot of time thinking about existentialism. The French also seem to have greater insight and appreciation for subtext and genre fiction. The books and movies that I love that are more cult items here are popular over there, so vive la France! Great creepy score, by the way, by Dominique Ney, including one of those melancholic French ballads I love. They're the kind of thing that kept Francois Hardy in business. Surprisingly available on iTunes, so check it out. After the controversy of Don't Deliver Us from Evil, Seria directed bawdy, lighthearted comedies, also featuring Miss Goupil in a rural French setting, including Charlie and His Two Chicks and Cookies. He also directed the surreal tone poem Marie the Doll, again starring Goupil. He's still active making films in France. Now that we've earned at least another day in purgatory, join me next time for the work of a true auteur. A low-budget action movie written, produced, directed by, and starring one man with a singular creative vision. And that singular creative vision includes satanic cults, martial arts, and line dancing. I'm talking champagne and bullets.
Woo! Let's do it again!
And if you're hungry for more, join me on Patreon for exclusive reviews. Don't hold out on Ramrod. This month I'm talking about Vice Squad, directed by Gary Sherman and starring Wings Hauser.
You wanna burn, huh? You wanna burn? I'm the devil, baby.
But until then, stay sick.